Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. So glad that you've joined us for today's Coffee with the Principal. I hope you had a great week. We had a great week here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. Lots of cool things happened. But today mostly won't be me talking. It's another of our amazing team members. So I'm very excited to introduce her. So again, happy Friday. Happy start of National Hispanic Heritage Month. We celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month every year from September 15th through October 15th every single year. So we are excited to do that here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. Just as a reminder, when you join the meeting, you've joined muted. Feel free to use the chat box as needed. We're recording this meeting, and we do that so that families who aren't able to join at this particular time can check out the archive of the meeting later on. We've got a big old email subscriber list, and so we send the link out on that on our YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our list. All right, so very cool things happening at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. So one of those things is, all sorts of learning happening. We were doing learning lessons on growth mindset in a lot of our classes this week, but this is a highlight from Miss Sanchez's class and what she is doing with her students. On Tuesdays, our teachers participate in professional development. So when the kids leave early at 2:41, they go home or be on the bell, and our teachers do strategic planning based on the instructional needs of our students. So that's what happens every Tuesday. All right, so couple other announcements as we get going. So one of the things that happened this week is every student got a Chromebook, and we are very, very excited about that. So we can continue instruction using that as a tool. One of the things that you can also do if you would like now is that kids now have access to virtual tutoring that happens live at home. So because they have a Chromebook that they have at home, you can have them you can enroll your child in home-based tutoring. And it seems like it's a little bit different this year in that it's not accessible on Schoology, but it is accessible through a website called enroll.lusd.net. And I'm telling you now, but it would be through the parent portal, and that will go live on Monday. So if you go there right now, it's not there, but it should be there live on Monday. So more information about virtual tutoring. All right. Next, tonight, we are very, very excited to have our first movie night of the year. We are doing a screening of Hidden Figures here on the front lawn. If you are coming, and we would love to get a head count so that we know how many folks are coming, so we can make sure we have enough snacks. And I've put a link right there in the chat, but it's also on the screen. It looks a little bit different than the link that's on the form, but they both go to the same place. So if you could let us know you're coming, that would be super helpful. So our organizers could make sure we have enough snacks for folks. Bring a blanket, bring a warm jacket. It's still summer for sure. But if it gets cooler, you want to be warm, and we want to have make sure you have a blanket for the lawn area. We do have some chairs, but if you've got your own lawn chairs, that can help as well. But we look forward to seeing lots of folks here today for a nice outdoor screening of the movie Hidden Figures. So a big shout out to Loja and to Donna and to all our families who collaborated and make this event possible. So we are very, very excited about that. All right, so let's see. Yeah, next is the best part, because I stopped talking and I turn it over to our amazing psychiatric social worker, Miss Tracy. So with that said, I will just say a few comments and then I'll turn it over to her. Miss Tracy is our psychiatric social worker. She'll tell you what she does, but we have been fortunate enough to have her at the school for, I believe this is her third year here at Katherine Johnson STEM Academy. And she is here 3 days a week and provides amazing services to our students here at the school. So I'm so glad that she's on the team, and I'm excited for her to talk a little bit about what she does, introduce herself to you. And with that said, Miss Tracy, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Yes, this is my third year. I'm so happy to be back. Like Principal Hunsberger said, my name's Shannon Tracy, or the kids know me by Miss Tracy, and I'm KJ STEM's returning PSW, that stands for Psychiatric Social Worker. You can see my email here on the screen if you'd like to jot it down. After the presentation, I will also provide contact information in the chat. But yeah, basically, when I talk to students or parents, the first thing I always say is, I know social worker, there's like a lot of thoughts that come up. There's different, a wide variety of different, roles that social workers play in different departments and fields and whatnot. And so as a school-based social worker, I tell families and students that my role is to support mental health. And so what I would like to do this morning, briefly, is just give a very brief presentation on what mental health is, and then end it with the services that I provide at school, just so you are aware. And also, if you ever do become interested in my services, then you know what I do and how you can reach out to me. So if we could go to the next slide. Perfect. So I know some of us might not have access to typing at the moment. We might be on our way to work. I totally understand, but I always like to start with this icebreaker, same with our students. If you feel comfortable, no pressure, but in the chat box, if you could answer, what have you heard about mental health? Or maybe what are some words that come to mind when you hear mental health? I'll give it a few seconds. So I always ask these students, I love to hear what their responses are. There's a wide range of answers. So what have you heard about mental health? Or maybe like, what are some words that come to mind? Yes, so definitely I hear this a lot. Anxiety, depression, feeling anxious, scared, stigma, absolutely. Maybe feelings of overwhelmed. Great, thank you so much for your participation. Next slide. Perfect. So yeah, the first thing that I tell our students is that, one, mental health is important, and two, we all have it, whether we acknowledge it or recognize it or not. And so what I explain to them is that it's like a wide spectrum, similar to our physical health, right? If we think of the great athlete, my favorite athlete's Kobe Bryant, and we think of, just like, I had students the other day say LeBron James, right? If we think of their physical health on this spectrum, athletes, they're on one end, they're really prioritizing their physical health, eating right, sleeping well, drinking enough water. And then there's a lot of us that may be on this spectrum. We have average physical health. We're doing our PE class. We are making sure we get enough sleep. But then I always joke with them that my guilty pleasure is hot Cheetos. They like Takis. I don't understand, but I'm like, we might have average physical health, right? We're not always prioritizing it. And then there's some of us that maybe have poor physical health, whether it's something out of our control, we have some kind of illness, injury, or maybe we don't know any better. And so I explain that that's exactly the same with mental health. There is this spectrum, and depending on how much we prioritize it and take care of it, we can either have what's considered like poor mental health, average mental health, and healthy mental health. But I always say that there is always room for improvement. So that spectrum, you're never stuck. You can always, with the right tools, with the right support, with the knowledge, you can always improve that mental health. But at the opposite, the same as well, where if we are not prioritizing it, we're not thinking about it, then we can also, our mental health can also decline. And so that's why I love to go into the classrooms. I've actually gone into every classroom now and given a similar presentation, just to let students know that I'm here and on campus. And yeah, so I also explain that mental health, it affects how we think, it affects how we feel, it affects our relationships around us, and it affects how, the choices we make. And so that's why it's important to prioritize it. And so with mental health, there's three different components. So it includes our emotional well-being. So that's, we all feel emotions, we're all human beings, but how do we handle those emotions how do we manage those emotions? Are we able to identify how we're feeling, right? A lot of times we might identify like, oh, I'm angry, but oftentimes there's other feelings underneath that anger, whether it's shame or embarrassment. And then it's also our emotional well-being is how do we handle stress when it comes into our lives. The second part is mental or psychological. And so that has to do with our thoughts. Depending on how healthy our mental health is, what kind of thoughts are we having? Are they constantly negative? Are we experiencing healthy self-esteem or low self-esteem? And also, how do we problem solve? So that goes hand in hand with our thoughts. You know, are we having a growth mindset? Are we able to problem solve in a healthy way? Maybe our mind is foggy. And so that's the second part. The third part is just our social well-being. So that deals with our social relationships. So how are our relationships at home? How are our relationships maybe with those in our community, like our coaches? How are our relationships with peers, friendships, all that? So all of that falls under, or those are the three components to mental health. And so it's important to prioritize it because it helps us handle stress in our lives. Again, it helps us with how we relate to others, and it helps us to make healthy choices. And so different ways that we can prioritize mental health is by talking about our feelings, our experiences, taking the time to process it, identifying our strengths and utilizing those, leaning on those. Something really big that I help with students is identifying healthy coping skills, right? So an example of a healthy coping skill is like going for a walk, talking to a trusted adult, versus isolating yourself, which could be considered unhealthy, right? Or using substances. And so other ways to prioritize our mental health is just prevention and early intervention. A lot of times, you know, just like that spectrum, a lot of times students or families may not prioritize their mental health because they may not think it's a big deal at the moment what they're going through. But however, if we take that first step and get the support we need, it's great prevention from so that it doesn't develop into a mental illness. And so just like one parent shared in the chat box, oftentimes when we think of mental health, we automatically go to the negative, right? We think of anxiety, depression, PTSD, suicidality, which if there's a diagnosis, that's considered a mental illness. And that's very much part of mental health, but it's under the huge umbrella, right? And so I always talk to students that there's no shame in prioritizing our mental health. And even if we are struggling with a mental illness, there's always hope, excuse me, there's always hope to move forward, to improve our mental health, to get the support we need. We're not always going to be stuck there. And something else that a parent brought up that I think is great is also stigma. I played a small video with them about how there is stigma around mental health. I personally think our society is getting better and becoming more open, which I'm thankful for. And I see that with LUSD just hiring more PSWs, which is my position. But I always give the example of we wouldn't judge somebody for going to the doctors if they have some type of illness or physical pain, right? And so it should be the same where if somebody feels like they need that mental health support, that we shouldn't shame them or tease them or judge them for getting the help that they need. Excuse me. So yeah, so it's great to prioritize our mental health. We also don't want to neglect it because if, like I said, it's that spectrum, right? So if we do neglect it, it could, not always, but mostly could lead to increase in risky behaviors. It could also lead to physical health problems. It could lead to school avoidance, especially if it's a child dealing with anxiety or chronic school absence. And it also can impact their learning, which is why I'm here at the school. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but it can impact, you know, their memory. Are they able to obtain what's being taught? Are they able to remember it? And so it could lead to low academic achievement or school dropout. And then lastly, the development of a mental illness, excuse me. On the right, you could see my QR code. I'll also put in the link to my form to schedule an appointment to chat with me. but I'll explain more about why you may use that on the next slide. And we can move forward. Perfect. So I'm at the school Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 8:30 to 4 p.m. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, I tell students to think of me as like a mental health counselor. So as a PSW, my goal is to help remove socio-emotional barriers to learning in order to improve the academic success of students. And so I'm available to provide mental health support to students, but also to families if it's needed. And at any time, a student can request to meet with me or be referred by their teacher, admin, or a parent. And so something that I do want to communicate too is that with my position, I do ask and need parent consent. And so if somebody does, somebody besides a parent or guardian refers their child to me and I chat with them, if the child is interested in my services, I will be giving a phone call home, just communicating that with you and asking for that consent. And so some services I provide are individual check-ins. What that looks like is they can come to me as needed, meaning maybe if they're experiencing extreme sadness or anxiety because something triggered them, they can come find me. My office has a calming corner. Principal Hunsberger has been great and very supportive. The school as well is just funding for something. So I have like nice like beanbag chairs and carpet and fidget toys and coloring, kinetic sand, all these things for them to de-escalate if they are escalated. And those check-ins are typically like once every couple weeks, excuse me, once a month. And however, I tell families and the students, if the need is higher, and the student or family believes that, or myself believe that the student could benefit from weekly full check-ins, then I can support the family with getting the students connected to counseling outside of the school. The only reason why I'm not able to promise that, it just wouldn't be ethical on my end because I do support the whole school. I always try my best to check in as much as possible. But I like to be honest up front that if the need is that high, the best route would be to get connected to an agency outside of school to make sure that they're getting the full support that they need. And I don't disappear. I'll still be available to support on campus as needed. The second is group counseling. So if I'm getting many referrals and let's say there's a handful of students that are struggling with anxiety or maybe grief, then I can meet with them in a group and offer counseling, which is usually about 8 to 10 weeks, 8 to 10 sessions. I also will be in the classrooms a lot. I do classroom lessons on different mental health topics. I do different curriculum. So for example, our 6th graders this year will get Focus. It's a resilient curriculum. We talk about healthy coping skills. We talk about effective problem solving, emotional management, and we'll be talking about effective communication. And then that's just one example. I also either put on parent workshops myself on different topics, or I collaborate with other outside agencies to come and present to our parents as well. I do school-wide campaigns, so I'll be in advisory classes. I work with the School of Mental Health department with LAUSD, and so every month we have different themes, and so I like to present on that and then do a lunchtime activity with the students. I also collaborate with teachers, staff, families. I'm part of the crisis response team. So if there's ever a mental health crisis on school campus, then I'm able to support with that. And I also am available to help link families and students to mental health and community-based agencies and also resources such as TAP cards. If families are in need of support with, getting connected to Medi-Cal or job fairs, food banks, things like that, then I'm able to support them with finding out what are the different local resources. And so if you feel at any point throughout the semester interested in my services, feel free to scan this QR code. It just asks a couple questions and it'll be sent to my email, and then I'll give you a phone call as soon as I can. And then right now I will be typing in my email. and also a link to, if you aren't used to QR codes and prefer a link, then here it is. Typing it in right now. All right, wonderful. Next slide. So I know that was a lot of information. I apologize. I wish we had like a full hour, but just curious as far as my presentation, are there any questions that I could ask right now? And of course, if questions come up later, feel free to shoot me an email and I can contact you. All right, I don't think we have any questions at the moment, so we can move forward if that's okay with you, Principal Hunsberger.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miss Tracy. I really appreciate all you do for our students here at our school, Catherine Johnson STEM Academy. Also very much appreciate you coming on to Coffee with the Principal this morning. So thank you so much for that. Just a quick little recap for folks who joined a little bit after the first announcements. A couple cool things going on this week. We have our movie night tonight at 6:30 p.m. Also, there is some virtual tutoring available at home. It goes live on Monday, so those are resources that you can avail yourself to. Very, very cool. Also, I'll mention, and I apologize because I don't have all the flyers for this, but there are like 5 or 6 clubs that have started on campus. One of them's after school. A lot of them happen during lunch. And those flyers are posted in the main office. So one of the things I'm going to do in future Coffee with the Principals, I'm going to, see if I can get those digital versions of those flyers and share them with families so you can see what they are too, and our kids can experience those fun things as well. All right, we do have a few minutes before the end, and so if there's any questions that anyone has for me about anything, that would be great. All right, I see a question in the chat that says, "What are the clubs that have started?" Okay, I'm going to try to do this from memory, and I can tell you that these resources are available in our main office. All right, so there is the After School Robotics Club, which Miss Dunklin is leading. There is the Math Counts Club, which is our math club that Mr. Kendrick is leading, and I believe I think the rest of these happen during lunchtime. So these are the math club that happens once a week during lunchtime with Mr. Kendrick. Mr. Abram, our science teacher, is leading a film club, so that's happening once a week during lunchtime. Mr. Feldman is doing like a board game club, so board games are kind of back, all the rages with board games now, ever since the pandemic, and they are fun. True story about board games. Sorry, I have the mic, so I can tell you, I can go on a tangent. When I was a kid, I used to play the board game Chutes and Ladders. Anyone remember the board game Chutes and Ladders? It's basically 100 squares that go back and forth from 0 to 10, 11, all the way to 100. And you roll a die and you move your piece. And if you land on a ladder, you get to skip spaces up. And if you land on a slide, you slide down. Anyway, I played that so often that even to this day, when I think about like a number like 83, I mentally place it in this blank Chutes and Ladders board in my mind. So if I think about like 88, it's here. And if I think about 94, it's like here. It's very weird. Anyway, board games with Mr. Feldman. And then Miss G is leading thank you for laughing at that. That's the right response. Miss G is leading a weekly leadership club. So Miss G is our leadership club teacher, and she is leading that. I believe that starts on Wednesday. And there's one more, and it is Photo Club. Miss Alejandre is leading Photo Club, and those are happening during lunchtime as well. I believe all of our lunchtime clubs, some of them happen on Wednesdays, some of them happen on Thursdays. And the reason they're staggered is there are some kids who want to do 2 different clubs, and that's fine too. And so those options are available. So great question. Thank you for it. Any other questions that folks may have before we wrap up today? All right, we just went from 10 boxes to 9, so that tells me that it's time to go. Thank you so much for joining us on Coffee with the Principal today. Have a wonderful day. Hope to see many of you tonight at Hidden Figures here at the school. And have a wonderful weekend. And yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.